dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice.
Yeah, I actually did finally see Pacific Rim 2 on the plane back from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
It is not as good as the original, which I maintain is a fine piece of cinema. But it does have...
it's a perfect film, the original.
It is. But the second one's pretty good. It has a lot to recommend it, but it's just not quite as good as the Pacific Rim.
I was toying around after I watched it I was like, I could do a complicated hero system port of this, but I could also do a much easier Mutants and Masterminds Pacific Rim 3 one-shot campaign adventure where it would be Pacific Rim versus Atlantic Rim, where basically all of our scrappy heroes from all of the Pacific Rim nations have to fight a new global superpower that's using combined kaiju and Jaeger tech to try and take over the world.
Ooh, I like that.
Because, I mean, the first one really leaned heavily in, like, the Jaeger pilots, they're not soldiers, they're rangers.
Right.
But they got away from that.
They did.
So having them fight a military force, I think, would be key.
I think that would be good, too. Plus, the giant robots fighting each other is pretty awesome. I still wish they would do, I don't know, they should have done a prequel, right? They should have done a prequel. The thing that everyone liked was all the cool old, Jaegers fighting the kaiju. They should have just, they skipped like the best part of the war and then murdered all the cool Jaegers in like the first, 45 minutes of Pacific Rim. And then again, perfect movie, but could have been more perfect if
Yeah, where were our like Jaegers that had a ton of personality to each run?
Right.
Like in the first movie, in the second movie, like they all get 2 seconds of screen time. Yet we know this is the cool high tech Chinese one. This is the shitty Russian one with a lot of grit.
I also liked how in Pacific Rim 2, the person who saves the day is a beautiful billionaire Chinese genius industrialist woman.
Oh yeah, they turned out to be the good guys.
Yeah, right.
That was weird.
It wasn't weird. It wasn't weird at all.
They were bad the entire movie, and then they turned out to be good.
I want to be clear that this is not a criticism from. It's not a nationalist criticism. It is a criticism of capitalism. But it is. Jarringly obvious when these days that every action movie must include a relatable and heroic Chinese character. It is there in every movie that is released for international audiences, from Independence Day to The Meg to Pacific Rim 2, must include somebody for Chinese audiences to relate to. And
the baffling thing about Pacific Rim 2 is they had a spot for two spots for super relatable Chinese characters. Why wasn't John Boyega's co-pilot the by-the-book Chinese officers just trying to get the job done?
Oh, I know.
Why was the little kid he befriends, why isn't she in the ruins of Shanghai scrapper? Like, why is she from LA?
I don't have any idea why they put in Clint Eastwood's cardboard son. I don't...
Oh, that's who he was. I was like, John Boyega and Charlie Day, and then the weird guy from the Charlie Day episode where he becomes smart are the only, draws here.
They are. I can't... what is his name? Bob Eastwood?
Bob Eastwood.
I don't remember. But he's Clint's son. He's very handsome and has, he's just like a brick. He's got no personality.
You could replace him with a wooden stool on stage. That's a 2012 election.
That's right. Deep cut there. Anyway, so I know I agree. There are plenty of places to improve on Pacific Rim 2. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about something that is relevant. By the way, the name of this podcast is Dungeon Master of None, and I am Rob.
I'm Matt. And what are we talking about that is relevant?
Well, so this weekend, Matt, you did something very interesting. And there's lots of things we can talk about, but I think, it's been a couple weeks, so let's review where we've been. I've done nothing of interest or relevance to the podcast, but I've been very busy. You, however, did something that was very relevant. So why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah. So shout out to Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was at their annual Great Lakes History Conference, and the theme of the conference this year was playing with history. So talking about the intersection of games and sort of interactive learning and history. So one of the people who put it on was the sort of reacting to the past. It's a sort of group of people who write curriculum that are basically role-playing games that take place in historical scenarios. So you could do a role-playing game about the end of the Roman Republic, the Mexican Revolution, or debating Impressionism versus Realism in Paris Salon. So all these cool things, and they're basically role-playing games. They're really exciting.
This is very great, and I was very sorry to have missed it because obviously it's in my wheelhouse. But you and some peers of yours attended in a professional capacity. What did you go to talk about, Matt?
Well, so I learned all about these role-playing games reacting to the past, but I'm not a reacting to the past game master or author. No, I was there to talk about, there's a bunch of panels on gaming and history, but the panel I organized was about using Paradox games. If you're not familiar, Paradox Studios out of Stockholm writes all these grand strategy historical games. Crusader Kings, Europa Universalis, and the upcoming Imperator Rome. Two of their developers who were basically the historian.
Don't forget Hearts of Iron and Victoria.
Hearts of Iron and Victoria. Okay, they got a million games.
Yeah.
Right? It's not all of them historical, too, like Magica, Stellaris. But anyway, two of the developers came all the way from Sweden, extremely jet-lagged, but excited to talk about the intersection of their games and history and that kind of stuff. So we had a really cool panel on that, and they're great people.
I'm going to try not to go off too much on this because this is something that Matt and I talk about all the time. And it's not explicitly relevant to the podcast, but it is very cool. It is very interesting, I think, to take a look at the way that video games model history, especially as a historian, because the main thing is that they tend to do it in a very deterministic, sort of Whig history way that, moves towards an endpoint rather than the way that we tend to think about history in the discipline. But Paradox has been doing a lot of interesting things in this way, and I think they have become a lot more innovative when it comes to modeling history and to making it possible for historical simulations to realistically reflect a new set of outcomes.
Right. Their games are all about sort of playing around with history in the actual game, right? Do you want to write a different history of the Mediterranean in the 16th century where Venice reinvigorated, reconquers the old trade routes and becomes the wealthiest place in the world? Or do you want to do something even more different where a unified Aztec empire invades Western Europe? Like this
Right.
game encourages that kind of thinking, and you have to go through. Oh, what would I need to do? And they're fun games and fun people. I don't know if you want me to get too much onto what my actual presentation was on.
We could talk about it a bit because I'm going to go back. I got a few more things to say, but I want to hear a little bit.
In addition to just sort of hearing from two developers whose primary job is to research history for a video game, which, that's a dream job right there. But my panel was on, how Paradox games encourage you to sort of see as a state, especially the one I was talking about, Europa Universalis. The early modern world is a lot the story of the consolidation of states. So that game, it kind of works quite well. But I think it's most interesting when it forces you as the player playing as a state to confront movements that are not centered around states. And I talked about the mechanics in this game that they implement for the Protestant Reformation and how exciting and dynamic it makes play. They have sort of a mechanic to represent like the 30 Years' War. And then I talk about, some places in world history that they don't do that very well, particularly the transatlantic slave trade, some of the difficulties in writing sort of a game about, one of the greatest war crimes and human tragedies in modern history. But, how that sort of leaves out a huge chunk of history and how things like the Haitian Revolution don't make a lot of sense, which is something that is in the game, don't make a lot of sense unless you put that into the game. And I had some suggestions about how that could be done. But more broadly, how these games can make us see outside the state, even as playing as the state.
Maybe we should do a podcast on this separately, but Paradox does a better job of this, and they're, like Matt said, it's difficult and challenging, but interesting to to model these things. I think the far worse culprit when it comes to sort of ingraining an idea of how history functions in mostly gamers' minds is the Civilization series, which sort of presents it as a series of milestones that all civilizations must go through. And Paradox is a lot better about this.
And progress is always up.
Yes, progress is always up. It's very linear. Everything is predetermined toward an endpoint. No civilization can ever not discover the wheel, things like this. Anyway.
Despite the Inca Empire not using the wheel and building a giant empire.
Exactly. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this is that I am a moderator of the not a moderator, I'm a flared user of the Ask Historians subreddit. And I would venture to say that upwards of 70% of the questions that are that end up on Ask Historians are inspired by or a direct result of people who play Europa Universalis, Crusader Kings, or Civilization. And so I think these are all good games, but I think that they have introduced some very interesting ideas into the minds of the youth. And so this is why I was really excited about Matt's panel, and I was really sorry to have missed it, because I think it's a very interesting conversation.
One conclusion from our panel and the great discussion from the audience was just that these games are so ubiquitous, and just like any movie set in a historical setting, but maybe even more so, they're getting people play them to think about history. And so we as historians have to engage with these games and talk about them so that, better historical discussions can emerge.
Yeah.
And the Paradox devs were super down with that. We also got to play some Hannibal Rome versus Carthage, which is a old shitty, takes an hour to set up Avalon Hill board game from the 90s, but that was a lot of fun too.
And this is sort of relevant because Europa Universalis and Dungeons and Dragons both have the same origin point, right? They both stem from, if you go back far enough, war games, especially gritty, miniature-based military board games.
H.G. Wells' Little War shit.
Precisely,
kind of stuff.
Precisely. From which Gary Gygax evolved Chainmail, and then the first editions of Dungeons and Dragons, and similarly, Paradox through many iterations produced their current crop of strategy games. So
now I'm just imagining the sort of the river or the tree of gaming history, like that old art of the tree of abolitionism, right? Of all these tendrils flowing out from the original war gamers. It's possible.
It's possible. I mean, it all was like, the trunk is chess or something. Or wait, hang on. There's a Babylonian strategy game, and I don't remember what it's called. Anyway, we should do that. We should create a tree or a river of gaming to the present.
It's if there's one other thing I wanted to mention at the conference, there are many other panels on gaming and history, and shout out to Dr. Alan White at, I believe, Wayne State University, he's not a historian and an engineering professor, but he uses the Fate system, right? And we've talked about Fate on this podcast before. It's very loosey-goosey, encourages a lot of outside-the-box thinking, but he uses it to talk about conflict resolution in industrial design. But he's also worked with people in the political science department and stuff, and I got to play through his scenario of the Cuban Missile Crisis using the Fate system. So that was also a lot of fun. I got to be General Curtis bomb them back to the Stone Age LeMay.
Actually, sorry, I skipped over some stuff. What else was standout from the conference? I forgot. There's obviously plenty of gaming.
Yeah. So, I mean, reacting to the past is, I think, one of just a standout thing because it does so much. I don't think it's the be-all or end-all of teaching history, but I think it's a exciting way for teachers at various levels, high school and college, to do a certain type of history through games. It doesn't have the kind of same mechanics, right? There's not going to be any dice rolls like in a role-playing game, but otherwise it is very similar. The one thing I feel like that's lacking, and the one thing that maybe gamers could help them out with is they rely on professors and things to sort of create the scenarios, and students play them. They play them very actively, but there's also a certain passivity to that. And being a historian is all about, making the decisions in the archive and in writing and choices and shaping the narrative. Unless students are writing their own scenarios for their peers to play, it's not exactly up at the same level. So there's an opportunity there. If gamers, actually, I met some people from Gen Con who had just discovered Reacting to the Past and just came to this conference to play Reacting to the Past and not to present a paper like people normally do at an academic conference.
Awesome. Well, yes. Does this happen every year, Matt?
No, it doesn't. This was so Reacting to the Past has their own symposium every year. You can see where the next one is on their website. We'll put a link in the description. But this year they were doing a special thing at the Great Lakes History Conference.
Excellent.
Yeah. Here is our first letter, Rob. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, this first letter comes in from Nate. Nate writes, just following up on your newest episode, brand new listener. That with Discord, talking about here playing online, there are several bots you can add to your server like Dash Delta that allow some complex dice rolling commands, a bestiary, and spell lookup, along with being able to program your own macros. That's how I've been playing for the past 10 months or so, and it's a serviceable theater of mind style of play. Like the show, happy I'm subbed, Nate.
I received some information about this after we finished our last episode, but Discord is definitely something that we should have mentioned, and it is extremely cool, and also I am old and trying very hard to keep up with new technologies, and I do mostly a good job, but Discord is definitely advancing faster than I am able to follow. But
yeah, when we mentioned we don't know if there's a dice roller for Discord, of course there's a dice roller for Discord. Right? Of course someone made that. And it's great that there's one that's easy to use. And I think Nate's letter brings a great point, which is, and I'm curious what you think about this, Rob, is that I think maybe theater of mind is sometimes better for playing online than using the mat.
I think I did say that, and I think it depends on. It depends on
lots of things.
It depends on lots of things because there are lots of scenarios in which it is very easy online to create a physical map or representation. Something like Roll20 comes with a super easy grid drawer. So even if you don't have a map and you have to literally make it up, you can do it about as fast as you can draw if you know what you're doing. That being said, I think I said this in the podcast, but just putting up the right image and then going with theater of mind, like a backdrop or a cityscape or something like that, is actually very easy to do and pretty strong in online play. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think because it just, like Rob said, it depends on your type of players. But if you have people who are easily distracted by the map, and if you as a dungeon master choose just not to use that, going straight theater of the mind, right? It can be sometimes as boring as sitting on a conference call looking at all your friends for 2 or 3 hours straight. But it has the advantage of there's nothing else to distract.
Anything else to say about Discord?
No, I think Discord is really stable.
It works. Listen,
it's important.
Listen, youngins, you don't know what it was like. Seriously though, you do not know what it was like to have to play video games with. Sorry, no offense. TeamSpeak and what was the other didn't we have Ventrilo and Xfire and God, we have gone through so many different. Truly, not they weren't that bad, but they were compared to how easy it is to use Discord, just abysmal overlays and TeamSpeak was insane. You used to have to do all sorts of weird nonsense to sign into the server and
find IP addresses and
anyway,
blockchain a data mine, I think.
It's so weird because we're not like the difference between I think being like a 30-year-old gamer and being like even like a 25-year-old gamer is just radically different. In a lot of ways,
it's 5 years.
But a lot has happened in 5 years. Anyway, enough of that digression. Discord is pretty cool. Everybody wants to pay me to talk about the good old days of gaming. I'm happy to do that.
We can title this section, Rob, Old Man Yells at the Cloud. Get it? Because the cloud. God. It's an Abe Simpson joke.
Damn it.
Cloud is on.
All right.
All right. Next letter. Rob, I think you're going to read it for us.
I'm going to read for it. Oh, by the way, one last thing I wanted to say. If you know any like cool technology, if there's something you like to use or you have an interesting technique, we love to hear about that stuff. So feel free to write in. We love hearing from you. So just, let us know what's up. All right. This is from Ryan. The message reads, "Hey guys, just listened to the episode about Roll20. Inspired by the Sneak Attack and There Will Be Dungeons podcast, I started DMing for my friends, and we all do it online through Skype and Roll20. I was skeptical of the need for Roll20 to start, but it is a great help. I agree with that assessment, Ryan. I am free to play right now, but I'm considering paying the first level for the dynamic lighting. I really like that I can import my own images for tokens and that there is some free music and sounds you can use. As a newer DM, I really enjoy the show. Thank you, Ryan, because that is who it is for."
Excellent. Okay. Glad that you're getting started out. About your question about dynamic lighting, I think I'm more familiar with this than you, Rob. Have you used it?
I have used it. I did use it for a while, and I liked it a lot, but I didn't have enough maps to really get use out of it. But maybe you can speak to this.
Yeah, I think there's several different opinions. It all depends on what kind of campaign you're going to run and how much time you have, right? Dynamic lighting is super useful for doing dungeon crawls where you have dungeons and lots of walls. Because what you might not notice from just looking at the preview of dynamic lighting on Roll20 is, and this is getting a little in the weeds here, so everyone bear with me, you basically have to create another layer on Roll20 and you have to shape out every single wall that you don't want light to pass through. So you have to, if you've drawn a map already, or if you import an image for a map, you have to then go back and draw walls onto that map, which can take a lot of time.
My first campaign was pretty freeform. It was homebrew. I didn't always have a very sophisticated map. And so dynamic lighting is, I gotta say, very, very cool. And especially if one of the things that's actually sort of difficult to do with D&D, this is less important in 5th edition, but it's pretty important in Pathfinder, is really to do lighting correctly because low light vision matters and dark vision matters. And a lot of the time that stuff gets hand waved because it's difficult to keep track of, but dynamic lighting makes it awesome. And especially if you're playing like a very tactical game, if you're playing a very dungeon crawling game, dynamic lighting is so useful. And I did not use it for my Strahd campaign, but I sort of wish I had. I already had shelled out a bunch for the book and all this stuff, and I didn't want to pay anymore. But it's just like $5 a month.
Yeah, you have to upgrade a level.
Yeah.
So
I think it's worth it if you are doing consistent dungeon crawls, but it does, as Matt says, it does require extra work if you're homebrewing. So just keep that in mind.
The one other thing to be aware of is that sometimes if you don't have everyone's vision set up on the tokens correctly, and it's very straightforward how it works, but it might take you a while to get used to. You'll run into bugs. People load up a map like, I can't see anything, right? But once you have all those bugs worked out, if you can clear that hurdle, it might actually be a time saver, right? Because you don't have to spend time lifting a fog of war on a map where there's something you want to hide from your players, right? Because it's all based on where their token is and what kind of light they're carrying, and that's it. So
does Roll20, I guess they don't like have like a preview or like a trial membership or something.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They should, because I would encourage you if you can to try it out first, but if they don't have an option for it, I guess just spend $5 on it. But
you can always spend $5 and then sub back down, and you're not going to lose anything.
But I do think it is a very cool and interesting technology, and when Matt was using it in his game, it was still pretty rudimentary, and I think it's come a long way since then. But just be aware that you may not get that much use out of it, and it can add extra work, but it is in my opinion, it's actually very cool when it works correctly.
Dynamic lighting problems solved.
Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light,
In this image we have been sent, he appears to be holding some sort of weird throwing blade called the Australian. Anyway,
And this is this image was sent to us
it
Matt.
is from Delicatessen. Sorry, I'm sorry. Abstract figure.
Well, Rob, if you had read the accompanying email, I'm not sure if y'all remember this, but this is a picture of a throwing blade type item that had a big impact on me as kids in my play group. 5 or 10 years later, one appeared in the French film The Delicatessen.
Okay,
from the same director as Amelie.
The one that I'm looking at has none of that, Matt. It just says a few of the popular throwing blades from the 80s and early 90s. So I just worked backwards, even though apparently in a different email he just tells me that. I want everyone to be very impressed with my Googling ability, and then we'll go back to talking.
Yes.
We got like duplicate emails or something, because some of them are from Matt and some of them are from Abstract Figure. Anyway, okay, so I'm following now. I was clicking on the wrong thing. Sorry about that, Abstract Figure. I'm going to refer to this person as Abstract Figure from now on rather than Matt.
Okay.
But thank you. I'm actually I'm glad that Abstract Figure brought this up, because one of the things that I was thinking about that we never got to talk to was Kroll, which is all about a weird, maybe futuristic throwing blade, as well as some of the others that he mentions in this email, like the blade boomerang from Road Warrior and whatever it is that Beastmaster has. I'm going to go off on a tangent here, Matt. I'm sorry.
Okay, sure. Well, thanks for writing us, Abstract Figure. Here's Rob's tangent.
Here's my tangent. So in Pathfinder, there's a lot more room for fiddly bits, and one of the things that I was always trying to model that I was never able to get quite right was a fighter or ranger character that exclusively threw weapons. I wanted an axe thrower or like a chakram thrower or whatever, and the rules never quite panned out correctly for it. There was the blink back belt, which returns your weapon to your hand, but it was still like once a turn, so you couldn't take multiple attacks. And
they just really wanted you to use a bow and arrow.
They really wanted you to just not be fancy. They wanted you to use a bow and arrow. Anyway, this actually does relate to what Abstract Figures, one of his questions, which is that he's DMing 5.0 for his kids now, and he's wondering if he should just do a simple adjustment of the throwing iron from 3.5, or make something magical, right? Like a magical boomerang or a magical throwing axe or something like that to give it other powers. And my instinct here is to make it magical. It, I guess, depends on whether or not, like, if your kids, like me, are extremely attached to the idea of having a throwing weapon.
I'm gonna guess based on how many kids shows and kids' iconic things have throwing weapons, from Wonder Woman and Captain America to like every anime ever. Yes, I'm gonna say yes. The answer is yes. Kids love throwing weapons.
Right. So
they love hurting themselves and other people with them. So have them do it in the imaginary lands of Dungeons and Dragons.
I love throwing weapons. Children love throwing weapons. Gimli loves throwing weapons, and he's my favorite character.
Xena loves throwing weapons.
Kroll loves throwing weapons. So my experience with this is that it's pretty hard to make an effective fighter character that exclusively throws weapons, because if you're throwing your +1/+2 axe at the beginning of every combat, you got to go pick it up. You run out of axes really quickly. And I previously mentioned the blink back belt, that you can use something that returns your weapon to your hand. There was the returning property in Pathfinder, which again was pretty good, but it did not allow you to exclusively, if you had multiple attacks, it didn't allow you to exclusively throw weapons. But since iterative attacks are substantially reduced in 5th edition, I think that you could easily design a boomerang or a chakram or a returning throwing axe that you could use on every, like, even if a fighter with multiple attacks can use.
If we wanted to create some really simple rules, since our letter writer is playing 5e and he probably doesn't want to switch, so he can give players, his kids, a throwing weapon using the 5e stats. How do you think we could go about that?
Sure.
I think we could do it.
Here's my basic idea is that
Right.
let's call it a throwing axe for simplicity's sake, right? Like,
So okay, and I'll give you the hand axe is a thrown weapon. It has a D6. Sorry. It's simple. Okay. It has a range of 20-60.
Oh, look at you having stats right up. Yeah, so let's call it a hand axe of returning.
So the problem is, right, he wants a non-magic weapon, right?
Well, he says, should I just do the boomerang, or should I make it magic, or give it other powers? And so
there's two clear options, right? If you make it a returning weapon, it's fine. They never have any problems with using a returning weapon as their iconic thing. So
to me, that's the only way to do this, right? We can try to design a non-magic weapon, and there are ways to go about that. My gut here is to make it magical and allow it to return with conditions, but. I guess you could design like a Xena type chakram or a boomerang that does return, and I don't know, you have to make a pretty easy check to catch it on the return.
Right. I would say something like this. If it's just for your homebrew game, you could just say, there are not a lot of these in the world. This is the last one. This is a chakram from another land. Give it the same properties as a hand axe or a spear when thrown, right? A D6 slashing damage, range 20-60. But if you want to make things a little, and you just say, it always comes back to your player's hands. If you want to make things a little more complicated, right, you could say something like, if you ever miss with it, then it will not come back to your hand. Or you could even make it a little more complicated than that, which is what Rob's saying, which is you have to make a throw with it, and then you also have to make another check to make it come back, which makes your job as the DM a little bit harder, but maybe feels a little more realistic for your players.
So this reminds me, so towards the end of my Pathfinder playtime, and this is still possible, I did retool my fighter to throw a shield. And while I still was not able to make as many attacks as I wanted per round, one thing one extremely long feat chain that was available was one that allowed you to bounce your shield from enemy to enemy. So if there were enough enemies in range, you could make as many attacks as you had by throwing your shield and having it, ricochet off from one to one, which is an extremely Captain America and possibly too superhero for many fantasy players. But if you want, that would be a great thing for, again, a Xena type chakram or a Kroll weapon or a bladed boomerang or something like that. Oh, another option is a chain weapon, right? Like
spiked chain,
flail. Or flail, or
the thing that assassin uses in Kill Bill.
That's what I'm thinking of. There's a Japanese.
The thing that assassin uses in Ninja.
That's right.
Assassin.
There's a Kasurigama, something like that. I'm a weeaboo. Don't you dare talk to me.
All right, fine.
Oh man, what? So something like that allows you to attack at range without breaking the rules of physics or anything like that. We've talked about this for a while. I got very excited. Anyway, thank you.
You did. Thanks, Abstract, for writing in, and we'll put a link in the description below to your suggestions for some cool thrown weapon ideas, which I also agree are very iconic.
Yeah. We will include the pictures that Abstract Figure included, so you can also think about thrown weapons of different varieties. And thank you for writing in.
Well, I heard you crying loud all the way across town. You've been
Why don't you read this one?
Okay, sure. All right, next question. This one comes from Adam. Hey, question for the next time you're doing a mailbag episode. Hey, it's that time. As a brand new GM, your regular advice is so helpful for fleshing out my campaign and bringing everything to life beyond what's on the page. The problem I'm having after our first few sessions is getting my players to take more of an interest in the world around them. They're progressing nicely through the story and getting really into the combat, but when it comes to the social side of things, I can't seem to make them bite. My NPCs are all sketched out with motivations, personalities, etc., as well as lots of world building or plot advancing information that they would happily share with the players if asked, but for some reason my players don't seem interested. I feel like they are potentially missing out on the chance to get more invested in the campaign setting and in building character motivation for the quests they're going on. How do I make them more curious? Adam.
I have some thoughts on this.
This is not at all a weird question to ask.
No, it's not a weird question
this
at all.
Is very common for new DMs after a couple sessions, right? You're in the right place. If that's where your players are at, I wouldn't be worried about it. But yeah, we've got some advice for you.
Yeah, so this is a good. The issue is, this is, again, like Matt said, this is a very common problem, and it's one that we have both run into. And the short answer is that you may not be able to get them to do what you want. They may not bite. Matt and I have both experienced planting very juicy hooks, what we consider to be very obvious juicy hooks, and having them be just completely ignored by players. But beyond that, it sounds like maybe your players are interested in something else. And without being at your game, I can't tell you what it is. But
But we can tell you a couple things, and I think the first is always, right, don't be afraid to address this out of the campaign, right? It is entirely normal to sit down before you start or after a session and say, hey, everyone's had lots of fun tonight. I think it would be fun if we did more of the social side of things with NPCs. And you may find your players are like, yeah, we want to do this. These are the things we're looking for. This is what's holding us back. Or they may just say, hey, we're not really interested in that. We kind of want just the combat and narrative to move forward. So don't be afraid to address this out of the campaign, right? You don't have to bang your head against the wall trying to guess out in the middle of play how to make this work.
Go ahead and ask, or pay attention to what they are focusing on. I have groups that are very, very environment focused, right? So they do a lot of investigation of doors and statues and letters and desks and bookcases. Like, they're always looking for like secret levers and messages and things like that. And so with those groups, I will, rather than planting an interesting NPC and expecting to have a conversation with them, I will leave environment clues, letters,
an ancient inscription,
right? Inscriptions or levers,
pottery shards,
right? Shards.
There's, I think, two intersecting things here, and I'm going to read this part of the letter again. The letter writer says, "My NPCs are all sketched out with motivations, personalities, etc., as well as lots of world building or plot advancing information they would happily share with the players if asked." So those are two different things, right? NPCs don't have to exist only, and I know that's not what you're saying, but make sure you think about this. NPCs don't have to only exist to share an info dump on your players, right? As Rob has pointed out, if you want to build more world building, instead of having the ancient archmage of the city of Thelonious tell them the 5th century history of their city, have them discover it in the artifacts they find while dungeon crawling, in the loot they find in the enemies that they're fighting, right? You can do the world building and plot advancing things without involving an NPC.
Right. Try to think of it's good that they have motivations and personalities, but rather than thinking of them as, even with motivations and personalities, tools for delivering your world building or plot advancing, think of it as more organic, right? What are your NPCs? What will they naturally know and be willing to share? And how does that make sense in a normal conversation, right? Maybe the shopkeeper makes small talk while they're buying things. Maybe the guard is rather than immediately acknowledge them, he continues having a conversation with his fellow guard about, the raiding orcs from over the hill or whatever. Get creative. Also, think of other ways to deliver this information that may be a better fit for your players.
And, last but not least, right? So separate, I think, world building and plot advancing from NPCs, because maybe that's not the way they want to interact with that information. But you can still create opportunities for, there's sort of a second part of this letter is, how do I get them to build character motivation and get invested in the setting? I think that's a separate
that is a separate question. And I think the easy answer there is just time. Time getting to know their characters, time playing, time being more comfortable with the game in general and with the party and with interacting with the setting. I find that as long as you're engaging them, players tend to get more comfortable as these things go on. I'm sort of assuming that this is a newish group. It sounds like it is.
The letter says first few sessions.
Oh, okay.
And, I think it is a little unreasonable, right, to expect characters to have really strong motivations in the first few sessions. It's great if they do, but if you're all new, you don't have to expect that.
Right. And so it's kind of obnoxious to say, but I would just encourage you to be patient and wait for your players to sort of come into their own, to get comfortable in their PC skin, and learn to interact with your world. I think it'll come.
It will come, and I would say go back to our advice or episode where we talk about like some of the Powered by the Apocalypse systems. If you want to think about character motivations, right? You have some story under your belt, right? So there are things your characters want. There are some things your characters don't want. Consider putting an obstacle, an obvious obstacle between those things, right? Or forcing them to confront those things. Forcing your players to make a difficult choice, right? And when you do that, that's one of the things that helps players build character, right? There's a thing in the way of the thing I want. How am I going to confront that obstacle, right? There's a choice, yes or no, left or right, that I'm going to have to make. That's a thing I'm going to have to confront in character.
A great, especially at the beginning of a campaign, great way to motivate your players to find out more and to get curious and to try to engage the world is to challenge them or take something from them. Have them be attacked and lose to somebody related to your big bad, or some enemy along the way. Maybe take something from them. Nothing critical. Don't kill anybody. Necessarily. But depends. Maybe that'd be fun. But this is something that is a great way to sort of kick them into high gear, to raise the stakes and to get them. If they're attacked by a masked figure or an orc warband, and don't have them announce that I'm Grog Bloodaxe of the Red Banner Orcs. Just have them encounter some bad guys and have a rough fight. And then I find that this is one of the most motivating things for players is trying to get revenge, trying to get back at somebody who did them wrong, or if they're more goody two shoes, have the same group witness a bad thing done to somebody else, somebody they like.
Similarly, and because it works the same narratively, right? You can confront your players, you can attack them, you can take something away with them, you give them a reason for revenge. If you're trying to do that same thing with just general interaction with this, I'm guessing, custom world that you've built, change something.
That's
right?
a good one too.
Next time they come back to a place they've been, or go to a place where expectations are one thing, show them how dynamic of a world is, right? They come back to the town they've been in, and instead of the town being like it's always been, the local duke, the local overlord is staying in town, and things are different, right? Maybe things are better. Maybe things are shittier. Maybe the people they've interacted with before have a different attitude now. So change things up and make them do something they were normally planning on doing, but there's another thing in the way. It's because your world is changing, right?
Right.
Try and put a change into your world to show how dynamic it is.
Right. And you'll recognize these strategies from every video game and novel that has ever been made. everything seems normal, and then the village gets burned down, or a new mayor comes to town who is evil, or even bigger things like there's a world-changing magical shift or something like that. You can go as small or as big as you want. It can be as simple as the people they're used to interacting with in the town are different now, and can be as big as there's a literal invasion force, and now they're dealing with an occupied territory or something like that. But don't be afraid to change things up, to shake your players into high gear and get them engaged with the story.
Yeah. And all the things we've mentioned, I think, are good advice, right? The sort of taking something from your player, giving them a reason for revenge, making them make a choice, changing something in the world, showing how dynamic it is, but or giving other avenues to give information besides NPCs about world building or the story. But remember making, and I just, was remembering your letter says the last line is, how do I make my players more curious, right? This is like a constant practice as a dungeon master, right? So you can think about this as adding a big thing, like we've been saying, or you can do it is in little ways, as little as possible, right? So tying, for example, the next time they get a magic item, right? It has an inscription that relates to the history of the world that, for example, if magic items are something they're interested in, links to, its sister magic item, or promises, or the treasure hoard in which it used to rest, or the place that it was made, right? So if your players are interested in rewards, right, next time they get a reward, build the world with a promise of more reward.
All of this is good advice, and you should follow it, but I think the most important thing is just be patient.
If your players are interested in combat, next time they fight someone, have them fight someone with a different type of weapon or a different type of spell or fighting style that they're not familiar with. And say, ooh, this is from the land over here. If we went to check that out, maybe we could find a master who would train me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for writing in, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Adam, for the letter. Good luck. You're in a great place. Keep at it.
Yeah, let us know how it goes. Any final thoughts? Thank you, everyone who wrote in and asked us questions. We love your questions. New listeners, if you...
Yes. Thank you, Matt Mercer, for retweeting a link to our episode. We have like 1 million new listeners.
Thank you, Matt
now,
Mercer, for tweeting us. If you came from Critical Role, please tell us why we're not as good.
Go listen to one of the old episodes about what you can learn from Critical Role. I think it's like episode 4 or something like that.
That's one of our early ones. But yeah, please absolutely write us and let us know if you have questions.
And final closing thought, Rob, since I'm still thinking about history and role-playing games. If you had to take one historical event and make it into a role-playing game, what would it be?
Good question.
Yeah.
Oh, I already did this. It was
oh, you did?
It was abstractly the Mongol invasion of Europe. That's exactly what I would do. But if we're talking more, are we talking strictly historical? Like, I don't get to be like...
No, you can loosen it up. So actually, your Mongol invasion to Europe, I did meet a professor who now teaches at my university, who for his Central Asian history class has a role-playing activity for students where they have to choose the next Khan to sort of talk about all the sort of fictive kinship dynamics of steppe nomad peoples. I gotta see if I can get that from him.
Oh, I would love that. The other obvious one for me is the Haitian Revolution, of course. I would happily play and would love to make a game of that at some point.
And that's the thing why these people want to use history and role-playing games in the classroom, need the creativity of experienced dungeon masters like us, because there's not a lot of primary sources of what went down in northern Haiti at the Voudon ceremony where, the slave rebellion was declared, unlike the oath of the tennis court, right? There weren't a bunch of people writing down what everyone said. Mm-hmm. So we need a little more creativity if we're going to get out of the mold of what is a cool historical event.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? What was yours?
I noticed there wasn't one about the Bandung conference in Indonesia, and I think that's a pretty cool instance where, there are a lot of structural forces against less developed or low-income, newly independent countries, but trying to see players, lead those countries and work out of that. That could be an interesting opportunity for some fun role playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so again, thank you everyone for listening. Please, if you have questions or comments, insults, write us at dmofnone@gmail.com. Add us on Twitter at dmofnone. And thanks for listening, and stay tuned for an episode soon. Keep rolling them dice.
Bring it in right quick though. Bring it in right there. Good. I'm Mr. Motherfucking like Esquire. Hold on, pipe down. I'm on the phone with National Enquirer and the intern inquired. Is she really my girlfriend? Is my album gonna be weird? And how much money have I acquired? I told her I can answer anything she desires. She said we can't be getting freaky or she'll be fired. But I was an artist running like Forrest in the forest that she admired. She told me to meet her in Bed-Stuy on Friday, round 4:45. I could barely get a break.